Miranda, thank you for joining us tonight to talk a little bit about SEAGLASS Summer and your other works as well. But to get us started, if you don't mind, could you tell our readers and listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing?
Oh, okay.
The big questions right off the bat.
Yes. Well, I noticed somebody was from Cleveland.
Okay.
And I'm from near Cleveland. I'm actually from Akron. I'm sorry, I didn't write down the name of the person.
Oh, it was Allison.
It was Allison?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Allison, I'm from Akron. But I didn't go to the monster truck thing this weekend because I was on vacation. But well, I was one of those kids that loved to write. And I don't even know how I started doing that. But I had a friend who would visit her grandfather across the street every weekend, and we would get together and write these crazy stories. And somehow I got hooked, and I was always a reader. My mom was really big on books, and we had this great next door neighbor, and my mom and my next door neighbor used to pass books back and forth all the time, and I used to help carry them. And as I got older, I would sort of like pick and choose on the way over.
Take a little finder's fee.
I would steal one. So yeah, but then when I was 14, I entered this writing contest. Well, it wasn't a contest. I submitted a story to Teen Magazine. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Of course I got rejected because I was 14, because God, what do you know when you're 14? But the rejection crushed me. It absolutely crushed me. And I didn't write for years after that. Which, isn't that sad?
That is really crushing.
If someone would have just told me, look, you're 14, like, don't give up, So, and that, I always keep that in mind, that when I'm trying to help other writers is, don't give up. And that's what Lori Wilde, I took a class from Lori Wilde when I really started writing again. And she told us something that has always stuck in my mind. And she said, the writers who make it are the ones who don't give up. Mm-hmm. And you just always have to don't take anything personally, which sometimes is hard, but
the hardest
that's
part,
what you have to do to succeed. Yeah.
And so, it's like learning that definition of tough skin and like how that applies to you specifically,
over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And you sort of get to the point where you just decide that, well, okay, this is another 1-star review, or this person hated this or that, and you're like, okay. Or, oh, I got rejected for the 50th time. Okay. You just keep going back for more.
Exactly. Like 51, I guess.
Yeah. So back in the days before I was published, I entered the Golden Heart 7 times. And that was sort of in the days when indie publishing was kind of sort of getting started. Mm-hmm. But every year I would enter that contest. And I remember my kids were young, and I would be like at the FedEx making copies, because we would have to send like 50 pages and 3 of those. So I'd be Xeroxing and sending and stapling and doing all this stuff, and the kids would be running around. And so finally, right before the 7th time, I told my husband, I'm like, I've had it. I'm going to have to choose a different path. I'm going to have to publish independently, or I'm going to have to give up, or I'm going to have to do something, because I just can't take any more of this. And I had written 4 Regency romances because I thought that's what I wanted to do. And those will be under my bed for perpetuity because they will never see the light of day. But so on the 7th try anyway, I finaled. And not only that, I won the Golden Heart that year. So, and it was because I stopped writing historical romance. Mm-hmm. And I tried a contemporary romance. So somehow my voice took. So that's kind of the other lesson to anybody who writes is you never know where you're going to land, and you have to be open to trying different things. But I was one of these people with Regency and early Victorian romance. And I have a master's in English. So I've read, mm-hmm. English literature, but I would be typing along and somebody would pick up a cup and I would be like, uh-oh. What kind of cup is it? And then I would spend the next 15 minutes researching cups. It was terrible. And then I would type along and then, uh-oh, what was in the cup? Wait, was it coffee? What do they take in their cup? Did they drink coffee? So it was kind of not a good, I have an OCD kind of brain. And mm-hmm. Historical was just not working for me.
That's so crazy. There's so many amazing threads that you just laid out there that I want to pull on and go
Yeah,
into. But
go
I
for
want to
it.
know from like age 14
Yeah.
to like what got you back into writing? Like, because you said you put it down and then we jumped to the seventh try and you got the Golden Heart. But like, what was it
Okay.
when the time come when you were like, I'm ready to try this again?
Okay, you asked, and so I have to tell you. So I love to write and I love to read, but guess what I did for a living? I went into science.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, I don't know, but it was because of my unhappiness in my health related career, which
Yeah.
actually I was a pediatrician.
Wow.
So
That's like real science too. That's,
yeah, and that's like a lot of years of doing a lot of science.
yeah.
And I did love the people, but my heart always wanted to write.
Mhm.
So so I stopped seeing patients and I started teaching, and then I started writing. And that's and then, at first when you sit down, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's a weird thing to do, right? Sit by yourself and write stories in your head. But I read something when I was doing my master's in English about, George Orwell, 1984, George Orwell.
Yeah.
He wrote this little piece that said he heard voices in his head, like as he was going about his daily life. And I had that same experience, that I would sort of hear people talking. I mean, I'm not schizophrenic.
Yeah.
But
You've done things with them. You're not a kook. It's fine.
I would hear voices, dialogue based on what I was seeing in real life, and I would want to start writing it down. So,
yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, but that's kind of what brings me my joy.
I feel like that's such a relatable thing for like that sort of when your brain clicks as a writer and you're like, oh, I'm going to do something with these voices that I hear, or these scenes that I see, or this like story that's just always following me around that I can't escape.
Yeah, it kind of is like that. Although, I have writer friends who are always having 3 or 4 ideas at a time, and I really never get that. I get one.
Oh,
thank God. and it takes a lot of years, I think, too, to develop like what is a story? How do you even start writing it? I think some people are really talented and they can do multiple things. I'm sort of like a one at a time, but that's okay. I'm kind of glad I have enough voices. I think if I heard them from all directions, it would be a big problem.
I am always like a little stomach turned with authors that are able to like write multiple books at once, because I'm like, it would be so impossible to keep track of everything. Like it would just, it'd be so challenging.
I'm a slow writer too. Well, right now I'm working for 2 publishers, and that is really a big juggle for me. So I really appreciate anybody who can really do that with ease, because I find it to be really difficult.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the books that made you fall in love. Like, what was the first book that you remember loving?
When my kids were little, I discovered, I think by accident, Lisa Kleypas. And I just absolutely fell in love with her. I think I've read every single book she's ever written, and I could remember the joy of her release days. I just remember just like running to Target and grabbing her book. I still do. But yeah, I think and Susan Elizabeth Phillips, Kristen Higgins. I know somebody, let me see, Meg is reading Kristen's new book. So am I. But I just have every single book of hers, every single romance is just treasure to me.
So are you able to read in your genre while you're writing?
I always read before I go to bed for about 15 minutes. That's why I love my Kindle, because it takes my husband about a minute to fall asleep. And then I'm like, oh, time to read. If I start reading before he goes to sleep, he'll be like, why are you reading now? And he blah, blah, and it's like the light is bothering me, blah, blah. So I've learned, like 1 minute he's out. Okay, my reading.
Put that right up. It's fine.
That's all so especially when I'm on deadline and I don't have much time, I just treasure that half hour, that 20 minutes, whatever it is. But what did you ask me about that? About reading? You asked me something. I don't think I really answered the question.
No, but I liked that. Yeah, I forgot too. I was like, I liked the answer, so that was great.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, let's jump into SEAGLASS Summer.
Okay.
Oh, reading in your genre. That was what
reading
it was.
in my genre. Thank you. Oh, so the answer is yes, I do. Like I read whatever I want. Like that's kind of that's my and I learned that I don't know how many of you do this, but I read to escape life. Like I want happy. I don't want horrible and sad in my books, because that's what I see in life. I mean, look at how our world is now. It's so full of chaos. So I'm not embarrassed to say that I love to escape, and I want to know that things are going to end well. And I feel that there are lessons in that too, watching somebody work through their troubles and come out, winning over something, I think is really important for us in life. Either that, or I don't know how we would survive. Yeah. Life is hard, really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that I think we all come to, especially for romance, is that we want something that's happy. We want characters that have gone through something, or maybe even sometimes they haven't gone through anything, and they're showing up, just living a happy life. And that shows us as readers that there is like hope out there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I find comfort in that. I was reading a book that made the New York Times list. It was a very good book. But halfway through the book, a character that I had become very attached to died, like sudden death.
I don't like that.
And I was and this was before bed. So, because I was reading before bed in the dark, and I was like, I shut my Kindle and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I can't go to sleep now. I'm like so traumatized.
Like, I get up, I'm going to go for a walk. I got to get away from this.
I had to get up because I think maybe this is part of a writer's brain too, but I feel like emotions impact me. Feelings impact me,
Yeah.
I don't know. So when something like that happens, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible.
Unless it's like something I'm looking for, like sometimes I'm like, I want carnage on the page. But if I'm just like enjoying my little sweet story and then someone just keels over, I do not care for that.
Yeah, it was like sudden.
Yeah.
He was walking a dog and it was sudden, and there was no, it just came out of the blue.
Well, let's talk a little bit about SEAGLASS Summer. Tell our readers a little bit about the book and what inspired it.
Okay. So SEAGLASS Summer is the second book in it's not really a series, but there's three lifelong friends in a beach town, and this is the second friend, and she's a widow, and she's also kind of the empathic friend. She wants to be a therapist. She's the front desk person in an auto body shop, and she never finished college because, she married her husband who was in the military. She got pregnant right away. Stuff happened, and her husband died. He had a military accident, and he's been deceased for 2 years at the start of this book, and she's really struggling. And she has a 5-year-old son named Ollie, and he's struggling too. So poor Ollie, she just wants him to have a wonderful summer like the summer she grew up with in this Victorian beach town, East Coast beach town. And poor Ollie is just absolutely horrible at t-ball, and he is just getting killed out there and bullied, and he has a lisp. And this kid is just not having a good summer. So she's struggling and he's struggling. And she makes a list of all the things she really wants to get her life going again. But it's just so hard. She's living with her parents because, she's single mom, struggling, and her parents have been great, almost too great. They've taken care of her son. They've taken care of her. They've made it, easier for her, right? As we do as parents. We don't want our children to suffer. But I think she's just really stagnating. She knows she has to get her life moving again. So her husband, his inheritance was this really old, dilapidated house that one day they dreamed of fixing up together, but she can't sell it. It's been in the market for over a year. no bites, and it's a
Mhm.
disaster. And she has no money to make it not a disaster. So she needs to sell this house so she could finish college, so she could have money for her son to go to college, all these things, so she could move out of her parents' house. But the house is just sitting there. So enter her husband's brother in arms, who has always been aloof and prickly to her.
Very
And
Darcy-esque.
he's desperately wanting to, he has terrible survivor's guilt, and he's determined to fix up this house. And he says, I will do the labor for free. You pay me when the house sells for all the materials. And he wants to do it because he wants her and her son to have a good life. And he feels that this is his way of atoning, you know, for the death of her husband. He has survivor guilt. He's not guilty for the cause of the death, but yeah. So, but he's in pain too. So it's a really emotional story, and it's getting great reviews. Like, of all my books, I've written like 15 of them. Like, I'm sort of shocked that people really are liking this book. And it's like, because, you know, like I said before, you know, whatever, good or bad, you're just like, okay. And then you just keep going. But I'm like, just really touched that people have written to me and they've really, really liked this book. So super happy with that.
That's so great. Did you model either character after anyone that you know or saw?
Yeah, I try really hard not to do that.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes minor characters maybe, but I try really hard not to make anybody recognizable to anybody that I really know. And sometimes they just pop up in my head, like the name Darla, you know, Darla out there. I don't know how I got her name. Sometimes I'm just writing along and I come up with exactly the perfect name. So one of these 3 friends is named Darla, and I don't know how that happens. But yeah, she's not modeled after anybody in particular, but it's sort of funny because as these women talk with each other, they sort of, you find their personalities, you know, and I don't know, that's how it happened.
What is like joyful and fun for you when it comes to writing friends?
Anything that can make me laugh. Like, and sometimes nothing makes me laugh. But sometimes a friend will just say something like right on the nose, and I'll just be like, I can't believe she just said that. But these 3 tend to kind of call each other out. You know, they're kind of the friends. Like, I have a best friend that I've had since 3rd grade.
Love that.
And, you know, and she's really like my sister, you know, and I sort of feel like these 3 are like that. They tell each other when they need to hear something, they will call each other out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best kind of friend, you know. You need someone that's always gonna boost you up, but also tap you on the nose when you need it.
Yes. Oh, you know, so I wrote this little kid, Ollie, and he really took on like a life of his own too. And sometimes when you write kids, you're like, yeah, this isn't cute and this is not funny. But this little kid, he sort of popped up. He just feels very real to me. Just, you know, how all our kids, like, you try so hard not to let your kids suffer ever at all. And this kid is 5, and that's kind of the age where he's had this cute little lisp his whole life, but now the cute little lisp isn't so cute because his friends are noticing it, you know, and he's on this t-ball team and the kids are laughing at him because he can't hit the ball, you know. And this relates to, like, I have 3 kids, and you try to shelter them those early years. You don't want them to feel the pain of life, but eventually they all do, because they go with other kids and this is life, you know. So this little child kind of made me chuckle a lot, because when he strikes out, he's so upset and angry after this t-ball game, and he stomps onto the bleachers and the bleachers are clanging, and he throws his ball and he bounces on the bleacher, falls under the bleacher. He's mad. He's so mad.
Oh man, I love how much you clearly love him, like writing him and being with him so much.
It was really fun. It was sometimes, well, you know, like, books are such a big struggle. I honestly, I don't know how anybody writes them because they're so hard. They're so hard. They're so much fun to read, and they're just so hard. And a lot of it's work, right? It's not all fun, but when the fun moments happen, you know, they do happen amid all the work.
All the chaos. Absolutely.
Like everything else in life, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Everything's work.
Well, Miranda, we are going to switch into our fun, just fresh facts questions portion where I'm just going to ask you some just rando questions.
Sure.
Okay. How important do you think tropes are to your writing process?
Oh. Well, in romance, they're really important.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't sell a book without using a trope. And I know that before when I'm coming up with an idea, my editors, I write them a whole synopsis to make sure that they're okay with everything. Mm-hmm. But tropes are what sells the book, I think. So I think they're really important.
Do you have a favorite trope that you like to write?
Well, enemies to lovers is always really fun.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most fun one. But I mean, I don't know, each book sort of takes on a life of its own. I guess you could even say widow is a trope. Military widow might be a trope.
I would accept that for sure. Absolutely. What is your favorite genre to read?
Oh, I read a little bit of everything. I love all kinds of fiction, upmarket fiction. The only thing I don't read, maybe I should, is cozy mysteries.
Oh, okay.
I read thrillers. I read memoirs, biographies, anything. I love everything. But not cozy mysteries. Like, I don't know why. Like, maybe I just haven't spent time with them enough.
All right. Well, we'll definitely have some cozy mystery recommendations for you from the readers for sure. Yeah. Okay. So what is your favorite time of day to write?
Well, I believe, I don't know if this is inherited, but my family are mostly night owls. Okay. But when you raise kids and you have to get kids places and you have to be places, you got to get up early so you can't stay up all night.
Can't be a night owl anymore.
I wake up every night around 11. I don't know why. I just feel so fresh and alive. I don't know, but it seems like between 10, but I have to go to bed, so I sort of I'm just hitting my pace when it's like, oh my gosh, time to go to bed. So, but I would say evening, definitely.
Awesome. What is one new hobby or practice that you've picked up recently, if you have one?
My sister introduced me to diamond dots.
Ooh.
And I think Marlene is out there, but Marlene does diamond dots too. So does everybody know what diamond dots are?
No idea.
Okay. And actually there's a store a lot of you are from Texas. There's a store called Craftably that is actually the first diamond dot store in the United States. I know this because my best friend lives in Dallas and her daughter got married, and I didn't have time to go, but I was really close to it. It was like an hour from Dallas. But anyway, so it's like color by number. You take these tiny little plastic dots and you stick them onto these little circles, and it's kind of sticky. But it's really complicated because the color patterns they follow the International Embroidery classification. So they're very complicated. So I wish I had one nearby, but I don't. But yeah, it's you could do Monet's, and they take months to do. They're very, and you just stick one dot at a time. So you have to have that personality where you just like to sit there, and I find it really relaxing. It kind of helps the stress.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds very soothing for sure.
Yeah, I find it soothing.
Now you can do portraits of people. It'd be perfect.
You can. Well, that's what you can do. You can take pictures of your loved ones and send them away, and they will come back as a diamond dot.
Cute. I love it so much. That's fun. Who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I don't want to say Heathcliff because he's a terrible boyfriend.
Terrible boyfriend, but he's a good first boyfriend in the sense you got to learn a lot from him.
Yeah. I love Jane Austen too, so I could say maybe Darcy. I guess I could say him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. What is your favorite writing fuel?
Coffee.
How do you take your coffee?
Black or with cream, depending. Seems like, yeah, but not too much, because too much is not good either. So
yeah,
when I'm on deadline, so then I'll switch to decaf, but I seem to always have it sitting there if I'm really kind of stressed. I always say it prevents me from eating down the kitchen.
Yeah.
So it's either I sit here and drink decaf all day or I eat the kitchen.
Exactly. Yep. I was gonna say the same thing about coffee. I'm like, I'm just gonna keep drinking caffeine or I'll eat an entire loaf of bread. I don't know.
Yeah, which is better for you. Well, I feel like after I have my morning coffee for the next hour, life is really good and I feel clever.
That's okay. No one's smarter than you at that time. It's
yeah, for just an hour. It lasts for about an hour, but it's like a great hour.
Yeah. What is one luxury item that you can't live without?
Oh, I'm sort of a cheap skate and I don't know. I got to think about that one. Let me come back to that. I don't know.
Okay, no problem. How do you celebrate a new release?
You know, I don't, I guess. I mean, I don't go out to dinner or anything like that. I don't know. I guess I can't answer that either.
All right. Well, this is good. You kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'd be very interested to see with some reflection, what advice you would give your younger self.
Yeah, don't give up so easily, and find mentors. Like that's the thing is, I think that, like, for example, one of the editors I had about 10 years ago, I asked her, how did you become an editor? Because she was talking about how she loved to read. I mean, we all love to read, right? But when I was 18, I'm not even sure if I wanted to be an editor, how would I even do that? Like, I would have no clue.
Yeah.
But I asked her, why did you become an editor, not a writer? And she said, well, I found myself reading books and then fixing them in my head, like, and rewriting them in my head how I really wanted them to be. And I thought that was so interesting. And she was able to make it to New York. I mean, that's really, I think you need guidance to help you do something like that. And I think a lot of us, I grew up in a very small town. You know, I think you have to be really aggressive to get mentors. And so I try to be a mentor to young writers because I feel that's really important, because if you don't have that, you give up, or you say, I just don't have what it takes. When really what you might need is someone to tell you, you do have what it takes, just don't give up. You know, seek more information, do this, do that. You know, we all wish we had a fairy godmother, you know, like, and sometimes you have to find your fairy godmother. That's really hard.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes you do have to find your fairy godmother. Are you a pantser or are you a plotter?
Yeah, definitely a plotter now, and I hate it. And often my plots change, but I find if I don't, I just get into terrible trouble, waste so much time. But I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It almost kills me. And my agent said, okay, you have to write a synopsis. I'm like, what do you mean? I haven't written the book yet. She's like, no. Before you write the book,
like,
just tell the book we need a synopsis. And I'm like, what? How do you do that? It's too hard.
Like, I can't do it. They're like, you can write a whole book, Miranda. No, can't do a summary. Can't do it.
Yeah. Oh, painful and super painful and hard.
Absolutely. I get that though. I've seen a lot more authors recently who are claiming they've transitioned from pantser to plotter. So I think that it's definitely a safer route for so many writers, really.
I have one friend who, she's amazing, and she can do it like a book a day. She's that good, but she has like the most natural, intuitive sense. She knows what needs to happen next in the book. But all of us aren't that lucky.
That way, yeah, absolutely. All right, well, Miranda, before I turn this over to our readers to ask their follow-up questions of you, I'd love for you to tell us what you have been reading, watching, listening to, and where you would like to have your dream cottage.
Oh, good, thank you. That went so fast. Like,
I know.
How'd that
30 minutes goes by quickly.
Okay, so I'm reading Kristen Higgins' new book, and so I've transitioned with her from romance to women's fiction. And sometimes I loved her romances so much that sometimes I struggle with her women's fiction because I loved the romances. And my husband always says, leave Kristen alone, let Kristen write her women's fiction. But I love her. I love her very much. And so I'm reading that book. And then I just came back from vacation and I watched with my family this movie that I think we got it from Amazon Prime, but it's called You Again. It has Jamie Lee Curtis in it and Betty White and more of like a great cast, but it's all about, we all have this, someone who sort of tormented us in our youth, you know, maybe in high school, but it's about that, but sort of in a multi-generational way. And you sort of come out of that thinking, you know, why are women or young, especially young women, why are they so mean to each other? And I raised 2 daughters and a son, and I felt that the girls had such a harder time than my son did with women's relationships. But this funny movie was all about that. It was really, really good. And then I'm listening to, I'm really hooked on this podcast called The Daily. It's by the New York Times. And because I feel like my knowledge base in current events was really poor. And so it explains current events in a way that's so understandable and so interesting. I just feel like I've learned so much. When I go for my walk every day, I put my little earbuds in and I listen. And then cottage, we just came back from the South Carolina Low Country, which is just my favorite place in the world. So I would have to want my cottage in front of that beautiful bright green marsh and that blue water. I just love it there.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. All right, before we say goodbye, where can readers stay in touch with you?
Oh, I do all the social media, but I feel most comfortable on Facebook, and I have this amazing group of women who come and chat with me there every day. And it's really fun. And my website, mirandaliasson.com. I'm on Twitter and Instagram too. So.
Well, stay tuned, y'all, for her follow-up questions.
Okay, great. Yeah, please ask me anything.